Why does our universe appear so exquisitely tuned to create the conditions necessary for life? This is a question that has troubled cosmologists and physicists for decades. A remarkable number of things had to go right for life on Earth to work out the way it did. Our best current theories of fundamental physics are the standard model of elementary particle physics and the theory of general relativity. The standard model accounts for 3 of the known 4 fundamental forces of nature: the strong, the weak, and the electromagnetic force, while general relativity accounts for the 4th, gravity. The universe is built on relationships between these forces, all of which possess specific values. Even the slightest deviation in any of these values, and the universe as we know it could not exist, much less support life.
There are certain questions that we consider to be fundamental if we're dealing with a single universe. How did it come to be that the mass of the electron, the strength of the electromagnetic force, the strength of the gravitational force, and all of the known qualities of the physical world that we have measured, how did they come to acquire the particular values that allow for atoms and molecules to form, and stars to form, and planets to form, and on at least one of the planets called planet Earth, life to form? Because we have also learned that if you change those numbers, some of those numbers, by even a few %, then the physical processes change in a manner that prevents the formation of molecules and atoms, stars, planets, and people. And so in a universe, a single universe, that's a puzzle. And some would say, well, God set those numbers. God was back and said, let me see, what should I do? Yeah, let me make the mass of the electron. Let me change gravity, because God wanted Adam, or whichever theological approach you like to focus your attention on. God wanted the world to exist. God set those values to allow the world to exist. Now, most of us scientists don't find that, it could be true, but don't find that a very satisfying answer. We want an answer that comes from physical principles that we can understand and calculate with. And in a single universe, it's very hard to answer that question. Nobody has in a scientific manner.
Theologians and even some scientists have used the fine-tuning argument to suggest that such precise fine-tuning in the foundational properties of the cosmos offers compelling evidence that it was designed for a purpose. However, many scientists aren't bothered by this seeming coincidence. According to them, the appearance of the design of the cosmos is an illusion. Brian Greene explains how the mind-boggling idea of a multiverse may hold the answer to the puzzle. According to Greene, if there are infinitely many universes, it shouldn't be too surprising that one ended up with the right conditions for life.
In a multiverse, you can imagine, and the math supports this, that there's so many universes out there with so many different values for all of those quantities that you can argue forcefully that you expect at least one, and probably much more than one, of those universes to have the values for those quantities that we observe here. You know, the analogy that I like to use, if you go to a clothing store, there's one suit on the rack and you put it on, it's a perfect fit. You're like, whoa, that's weird. They just happen to have my size. Wow, what luck. But if you go to a clothing store that has every size suit on the rack, and the salesperson goes up and picks your size off of the rack and hands it to you, and it fits perfectly, that's not a mystery any longer. No fine-tuning, no luck. Every possibility for suit size was out there. And of course, yours was among those possibilities. Similarly, if every possibility for the values of those numbers, those qualities of the universe are out there in some universe, no mystery why one of those universes, or maybe many of those universes, have the qualities that we are familiar with. So do you view that as negating God? I don't know. Maybe you say God's even more grand. God didn't just create one universe. God created the multiverse. I mean, if you want to go in that direction, and I'm not encouraging you or discouraging you from that direction, the multiverse doesn't prevent you from doing so.
We may seriously underestimate life's natural tendency to behave in a particular way under different laws, constants, and boundary conditions, because we are biased to assume that all possible kinds of life will resemble life as we know it. Many scientists and philosophers use the anthropic reasoning to explain why we live in the kind of universe we do. If life were impossible, no living entity would be there to observe it, and thus would not be known. That is, it must be possible to observe some universe, and hence the laws of any such universe must accommodate that possibility.
The anthropic principle is a pretty straightforward idea. It says that you need to take account of those things in the environment that you are able to see versus those things that you're unable to see, because that will bias your observations. A very simple example is, imagine you're a fisherman and you have a net. And imagine that the net has an opening that's roughly 1 foot wide. You catch a lot of fish and you look at the fish and you come to the conclusion that all fish in this ocean are all bigger than 1 foot in length. Well, that's actually a wrong conclusion because you haven't taken into account that the only things that your net could catch are fish that are bigger than 1 foot. All the little fish, they got through the net, you didn't catch them. So you need to take account of those things that you're able to see by virtue of the way in which you're examining the environment. And we have to do that in physics too. We have to look at the universe and take account of the things that we might be missing or the things that we're only privy to by virtue of the way that we observe the universe. Einstein is the epitome of the opposite perspective from the anthropic principle. He dreamed that there was a single unique universe, and that by sufficient perseverance, by sufficiently clever observation and experiment, by sufficiently creative theorizing, we would come up with laws that explain that single unique universe. I personally have held that perspective for all of my scientific career. I still, in a sense, hold that as the dream. I would love that to be the case. But we also have to bear in mind that might be the wrong perspective. It could really be the case that there are other universes out there with other properties, and there is no unique explanation because there is no unique universe.
By tweaking the laws of physics in calculations, physicists can examine whether, in theory, life could have arisen in a different kind of universe. Take gravity, for example. If it had differed only slightly, the evolution of the universe would have proceeded very differently, and life, as it is understood, may not have been possible. Scientists are constantly pushing the boundaries of our knowledge. However, the multiverse theories have drawn criticism from some scientists, who warn of the danger of speculation beyond what observations can tell us. They claim that the multiverse theories lack the falsifiability required to render them legitimate scientific theories.
While I understand that perspective, and in some ways there are aspects of that perspective that I subscribe to as well, my own view and the view of many of my colleagues is, if you're developing a mathematical theory, it's not the case that every quality of that mathematical theory needs itself to be observable. You just need enough qualities of that mathematical theory to be observable. Hopefully you observe them, confirming the theory based upon those observations, and then you're willing to entertain those implications of the math that may not be observable, such as the possibility of other universes. So it's a very limited way of thinking. And, look, some of my closest friends have that perspective, and that's fine. But it's not a perspective that I hold, not a perspective that many of my colleagues hold. And moreover, let me just finish this little answer by saying it's not impossible to get evidence for a multiverse. If there are other universes out there, it's conceivable that we could interact with them, have some sort of collision with another universe. Think of many bubbles in a bubble bath. This is a cosmic bubble bath, of course, but bubble universes can hit each other. And the calculations suggest that if we were to have that kind of an encounter with another universe, there would be evidence for that in the so-called microwave background radiation left over from the Big Bang in our universe. Tiny temperature differences across the night sky might give us indirect evidence that we were hit by another universe, indirect evidence that is that there is another universe, indirect evidence that is for the multiverse.
Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? Then show your support by subscribing and ringing the bell to never miss videos like this.